Part two, Cries and Whispers. Welcome to it. It's such a good movie that it deserves two parts. It's my favorite movie ever made, Ingmar Bergman's ultimate masterwork and the most important film in my life. And I want to start it off by asking a question that I ask of every Bergman film. God was a very important part of his own psychology, of his own philosophical makeup. And God religious symbolism is very apparent in his work. Where is God in Cries and Whispers, David?
That's a very profound question. I would say two parts you can find God very overt. And the first part was when Anna was praying, and she was praying for deliverance. And the second part is when the pastor starts reciting the rites over the dead body of Agnes.
You see, I was picking up God from something that you actually said about persona. You brought up the idea of, well, it's two different ideas. The first one is the idea of Christian guilt, which this film is littered with, and we should start with that one. And I'll go into your other point that you made about Bergman previously. It was more a Kierkegaardian point that you made. But this one, Christian guilt is just everywhere. It's all about chastity. It's all about punishment. It's all about self-immolation, almost, especially if we're going with the red part of color theory and concepts. What do you have to say about the Christian guilt of Cries and Whispers?
All right, I'm following you. I think a big part of that is also when Karin stabs herself in a very intimate spot, and then she smears the blood on her lips, and she has that sort of it's not even, it's like a conquering smile. Yeah, is how I would describe that.
And well, I love that in that that box of consciousness little vignette of Karin, it establishes her as a non-sexual or asexual creature, the way that she is undressing herself, all her many layers, and it's completely anti-erotic and anti-romantic. And she keeps repeating her mantra of web of lies, all of it. And I believe she cuts off her clitoris because she does not need any pleasure. She does not like to be touched. She is not a pleasure-seeking individual person or archetype.
Right.
And I think that that's completely fascinating. And yeah, her face, when she smeared, her expression is definitely one of, she's conquered it. It's a victory in her eyes.
In her eyes, yeah. Mm-hmm. And I would actually criticize that particularly because it's not that it is a conquering. It in her mind it is.
Yeah.
And it is a vanquishing of a demon. At the same time, I also recognize that reaction, that was the necessary pain that she had to endure in order to overcome that and to conquer it. Yes. And so for anyone else, for someone like me, being able to watch a film like this, I can transcend it and not have to go through such a painful moment in my life. Like I don't have to do anything.
Absolutely, but I do believe that was expressive of some sort of course, to say it was off-putting would be the understatement of the year. But I got the victory from it. Yeah. It really did establish her as, Bergman would call her the strongest one. And wow. Another element about Bergman that you pointed out, you brought up a theory of Kierkegaard where Mephistopheles is having a conversation and they use an arbitrary number about how God reveals himself to man.
Right. So this is Mephistopheles talking to Don Juan.
There we go.
Yeah. And so the question Kierkegaard asks is, does God seduce people through 1003 or through the one? Mm. And the reason he's asking that is because the 1003 is an arbitrary number on purpose, because he's basically saying it in a poetic way. Does he seduce us through the masses, or does he seduce us in our times of loneliness?
Wow. I think we definitely apply some of that over to Cries and Whispers. There's something that you would like to talk about Cries and Whispers specifically before I get off on a tangent?
I do want to talk about, you mentioned earlier in part one, how they do the juxtaposition between the black and the red.
Yes.
And how the red is the cries and the black are the whispers.
Yeah.
And that ties in directly with when you're seeing those still shots of the expressions of each character. You're seeing Anna, and you're seeing Karin and Maria, and even Agnes goes through it, and that's you said the boxes of consciousness.
That's what I called them. Yeah.
Yeah.
And but when Anna goes through it, remember when she comes out of it, there are no whispers.
Yeah. And so that I would say, I know that you think Karin is the strongest character,
Yes, I do.
and I think she's strongest in a very practical and a real sense. At the same time, I would also recognize that being strong is not necessarily and always a good thing.
No, but I think
Yeah.
that was deliberately conveyed by Bergman, as strength could actually be the greatest character flaw that you could possibly have as well. And while I would call her the strongest one, the one that is most villainous or that I'm most afraid of is Maria.
Oh yeah.
She's her wickedness is not only nauseatingly sensual; it's incredibly attractive to me.
Very
Liv
attractive.
Ullmann's one of the most beautiful creatures ever captured on film, and this is probably her at her most exquisite, but also at her most devilish and wicked. Bergman did that it was very precise and very purposeful. What do you have to say about the way that he framed her beauty on film, the femme fatale idea of it?
So the femme fatale of Maria is painted as, you said it before, childish, but I would also add that she was also, I'm trying, the word escapes me. I don't want to say villainous, I don't want to say childish, but
Duplicitous?
yeah, that's pretty good. She knew she was childish. She
Yeah.
knew she had this, but she didn't care. And that sort of apathy destroyed her, and so whenever it comes to like demons or conquering demons, there are 4 different ways in which a demon can be conquered. And we see that in Karin. Karin, she is conquering it, literally making the demon her bitch. I mean,
Yeah.
in a real way, she is. And that's through chastity. She's making herself chastised. And we see that also again in Agnes. Agnes, she's pretty much bereft of it. She's bereft of any love except from her family. And she has she doesn't, I guess she kind of does have a sort of like an intimate bond with Anna, right? Or Anna.
Yeah.
And there is that is interplayed, but that's more like the embracing aspect of a demon. So then that's the second way in which a demon can be conquered, or well, I should say overcome would be the correct term. The third way would be, which would be Maria, and that's horrifying. And what that is that's actually, you have to destroy yourself and rebuild, and that is the most bitter and harrowing experience, because she literally, the demon, not only just has taken a part of her whole identity, or at least a part of her whole identity, and is able to just completely do whatever it wants. And that's why you see her in those dark, still moments at the end of the movie, where she's literally raging and screaming and trying to escape, but she can't. Because the demon has just literally taken a hold of her.
Yeah.
And she has to destroy a part of herself in order to escape, but she can't.
And
Horrifying. And the last is the transcendence, and you see that. And Ingmar Bergman knows these. He must know this because he pictures each 4 of the person, and he does it deliberately.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that's just masterful, because
powerful as fuck.
because the transcendence of Anna, and why I respect Anna, and I think Anna is the only good character.
Yes, but I think I don't like Anna for some reason. She's the one who I trust the least, and I think it is because she's the most pure and likable.
I think it's because she recognized that her embracing of and her lustful desires of a dying woman was twisted.
It was.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
And,
boy.
and she had to pray to get out of that.
Ingmar Bergman
Yeah.
weaponizes eroticism in this film.
He sure does.
And even if you could argue that it's more a maternal kind of babying or replacement for her infant that she's lost, you could argue that. I can't deny the incredibly sexual undertones of the whole event. So
Definitely. I can't deny it either. And so that's, I think, a big part of it, because especially I don't know any other film that does it so well, that does this portrayal of where our human condition. As humans, we have this sort of inability to overcome our demons, and he takes it and puts it into a film, and he touches on the most difficult obstacle.
Yes, he does.
And that is through our sexuality. So that sent me reeling.
It's a psychosexual masterwork. And I hope you understand why it's my favorite film of all time. You know what attracts me to film. And this one, Bergman does everything that I like to see in a film. It's just that he does it better than anyone else. The filmic language in this particular piece is stunning. And I would call it flawless. Completely flawless. Bergman is just absolutely incredible. What do you have to say about the pacing and the critical framing of the film? How he composed his shots and how they fell into the lyrical meter of the entire production.
I really like Craig and what he said in the first part of this. Is that it is a very much a present film.
Like a seamless kind of event.
And what I really agree with that, and what I really like about that analysis is it's intuitively easy to grasp, because each moment, even though you see moments where it's in the past, you see Anna is able to accept and be grateful despite a dead child. And that's what you see when you see the crib, an empty crib, while she's praying beside it. And that's like, you can tell Bergman did that on purpose. That's why he specifically put the lens on that crib, and that it was empty. And then you see it again later on. You see Anna hear the cries of a baby.
Yes.
And she's haunted by that.
Well, every character seems haunted, just like I called Persona, like, it's filmed with very Hitchcockian sensibilities that play on our anticipations of a thriller, and it never completely follows through on that believed-in promise. Cries and Whispers is filmed like a classic ghost story quite a bit of the time, and each character involved, we definitely know why they're haunted, and they definitely all are. They are haunted by specters, by ghosts, by callous mirages. Each one of them is afraid of something, and each one of them keeps hearing that in the back of their mind and running away from it. Each character is completely possessed by something demonic. Right.
And you can see how Karen, how she's possessed by this sort of, I would call it negligence. That would be the word I'd use, because her persona, I don't identify with any of the characters, for starters. And just seeing that, though, how it manifests in her husband, and how her husband is eating right after Agnes's death in that dining room. And he's just like drinking the wine as though nothing happens.
The red wine.
Yeah.
And I didn't connect with any character either, but that's because I believe in the technical character of Cries and Whispers is a persona unto itself. I think that the overall compositional elements of the film all culminate to make a very powerful character piece itself. I see the film as a personality as opposed to the personalities within it. So I find it intensely relatable, but I guess I'm talking about the character of Bergman, who is ever omnipresent in his own films in his own way.
I can see where you're coming from. I don't know exactly. Could you elaborate more on...
Well, just the artistic character of Bergman, and I think that he created his film, this one in particular, seamlessly, very methodically and deliberately, to have its own technical character, whereas I don't think he wanted you to relate to each individual character, perhaps maybe in situations, but not an overall identification with any specific woman involved. I think that he wanted you to relate to the style of the film. I think it was a bit more intuition. I think he wanted you to relate to the overall ethos and the overall pathos of the entire film itself as a whole, as a work of grand art, as something painterly, as opposed to what is actually contained within the painting.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. I see what you're saying now. I definitely did get the ethos he was trying to convey. And I think a lot of that was through his disgust of how people bastardize faith.
Yes, getting back to the faith, because we can't escape religion, and no character in a Bergman film can escape God.
Right.
Not a single one. What do you think his views on the Christian God are?
I'm not sure, honestly. I don't want to say.
Well, I mean, we don't have to speak absolutely, but from watching this film, if you were to be asked, what was its general spiritual attitude?
General spiritual attitude of Cries and Whispers?
Yeah.
It's not that I have doubt, because I know and intuitively feel what he's trying to convey.
That's it.
For me specifically, I felt a great moment of transcendence.
Yes.
And for me, that was the most powerful message I was able to get from that. And so when I say I don't know what he specifically thinks of the Christian God, it's not that I doubt what he thinks of it. It's what I think he doubts what culture thinks. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely, yeah.
So I think he's criticizing the different cultures and the different peoples, and how all of these individuals take their faith, take their religion, take their beliefs, and sort of incorporate it into, and that's where it manifests most, is in the sexual aspects of our characters.
Yeah. That's oftentimes the most vulnerable parts.
Mm-hmm.
The most likely to be disgusting.
Sure. And oh my goodness, there's so much more to add to that, because I mean, getting back to the 4 different levels of how to conquer our overcome our demons, through the conquering, through the embracing, through the transcendence, or you let it destroy and rebuild you. And I think that's all a part of our. I hate to bring in like psychology, but that's.
Oh no, I think that he does have an interest in psychology, and I do think he demonstrates it in his films.
And I think that is, you see Maria's shadow and Karin's shadow the most.
Yeah.
You see that shadow just sort of jump out, and the moment. Yeah.
As I was saying earlier, like the shadow archetype should be what it implies. It should be that it's in the background, or it's somewhat concealed.
Until
Bergman flips that concept, just like subtext and narrative. He puts the shadow archetype where the falsification of that should be.
Mm.
He does it effortlessly. Bergman films follow their own dream logic to the point of no return. Very, very brave filmmaker. Do you have something else you want to say?
I do have a couple more things.
Let's do it.
The other things I want to say is, I mean, whatever any listener or anyone watching this film gets out of that, they shouldn't look at it as a tier or as a hierarchy of how you overcome the demon. Instead, you should look at it all through the lens of progress. I think that's very important. So I've met many people over my lifetime, and I've seen every aspect of how people go through those demons and how they are able to overcome them. And so I've seen people who do have a part of them destroyed and rebuilt. But at the same time, I don't see that as a bad thing, so long as you don't quit.
Yes.
So
persevere.
And that's part of this film, because you have this hypnotic quality, this trance-inducing quality to it, because you don't want to look away. You do, because a part of me was very uncomfortable in several scenes. And I did want to look away, but I couldn't.
Exactly. Bergman had you. He had you ensnared.
and that's beautiful, absolutely. And that is part of that overcoming, is being able to work through it. And the people who fail are the people who quit, who kill themselves or whatever. And I have myself gone through harrowing tales, harrowing pasts, and I'm sure we all have at some point in our lives. And the concept of suicide is visited in this film.
It is by Karim.
Yeah. And so that's definitely already there too. He knows, he touches each aspect of our weaknesses. That's just very powerful to me, that he's able to not only know those things, but he's able to do it, just like you say, effortlessly.
But and never has to compromise any of the poetic strength of his images, ever, not once.
Oh my goodness, those still shots when they're all right. I think it's right as Agnes is dying, right before she starts the animal noises. You see that still shot of Anna in the hallway of the door. Then you see Maria sitting down and Karen staring out the window. And that's the room of red. It's like
it's a painting. Beautiful tableau. It's perfectly framed, perfectly choreographed, and perfectly captured. This is the best photographed film I've ever seen, because each individual component of the overall composition just expresses so much symbolic, literal narrative. Every kind of value you could possibly get from visual grammar is completely pronounced, completely clear, cohesive, and it's powerful. And even if you don't completely pick up on all of the different elements that Bergman is incorporating into his very complicated and unforgiving film, you are still intuitively being changed and hypnotized and analyzed by the overall experience.
Yeah, and that's very true because of what Maria says in that analysis when David is saying that to her, telling her about you have that sneer on your nose, and you have that slight lip curl and that smirk, and you look at your eyebrows, you have a wrinkle there, and now you're wearing makeup and your face is more pale, and so forth. And then for her to just sit there and just say, well, that's all in you, that's why you see it.
Of course. Maria had the last laugh.
She did.
She really did. And it was just as wicked and just as fucking beautiful, sexy, and attractive as she. Well, I mean, oh my god. Yeah, we watched the femme fatale being deconstructed via art house and avant-garde sensibilities. And I still walked away completely pulverized by her sensuality, by her eroticism. I still walked away because I fell right into it, trapped. Fell right into that archetype again and again and again.
Damn.
So good, man. It was so good. I just want to ask you, I asked it earlier, but me and David have really similar taste when it comes to great films. We're both big fans of Tarkovsky, Fellini, Long, and Bergman. Do you respect my decision that this is my favorite film of all time?
Sure.
Because an argument I think could certainly be made for at least its poetic language, its filmic grammar is simply more complicated, but also more more cohesive, more coherent. He doesn't sacrifice any strength, and yet it's still a film that you can approach.
That's very true, because there isn't anything that is like in Persona. There is this sort of complexity where you have to,
yeah.
And it is this not the prologue to Persona?
It could be.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is.
And the Cries and Whispers have ended, which Kubrick definitely saw the credit sequence of this film and applied it to films like A Clockwork Orange and things like that. Kubrick was definitely.
It makes me want to rewatch Persona and see if the character.
Actually, Clockwork came out. Never mind. But I know that Kubrick is very, very inspired by at least the photography of this film, because you can see it in very limited.
You're right, because it's almost like a flip book. If you could imagine, taking every iconic scene, which most of it is, but you could do that, and you could if you had a giant flip book and you just kind of just thumb through everything without subtitles or anything, you could still get a general idea of what's happening.
Exactly, and that's because film is supposed to be a mostly visual thing. A lot of people agree on that, and Bergman got it. He got that idea so well, and you could tell that he's a cinephile. You could tell Bergman's obsessed with film because he seems to understand its power more than anyone else, and he can demonstrate that power just with ease and with complete mastery. It's fucking fantastic. Do you have any closing statements you'd like to make?
A couple, if you don't mind.
I don't mind at all.
Okay. I would also like to point out, it's just to me, I was hoping he would actually bring in some Bible verses, but he doesn't. And I think the reason he doesn't is because it's perhaps possible that Bergman looked at the Christian Bible, and this is completely speculation, but looked at the Christian Bible as though it were the crowd's version, the Mephistophelius version.
I get what you're saying.
Right, and that's only the interpretation, not necessarily the actual Bible itself. So I'm not like lampooning or criticizing the Bible, more so I'm criticizing the general culture's interpretation, modern American culture, or abroad, even in Europe, the European Catholic version as well.
Yes.
So I think that's subtly there, and it's also the other closing statement I would like to make is I think that the film itself really sets itself apart because of those emotionally captivating moments where he goes from everything from suicide and existential anguish to sorrow, despair. I mean, he goes through
so palpable, like
yeah.
You can't help but feel it.
And then he even goes into he even touches on happiness towards the end of it.
He really does.
Yeah.
He ends on happiness.
He ends on happiness.
And thus the Cries and Whispers have ended.
Yeah.
Why do you think they ended?
Well, I think that explains it. Right in the middle is basically what he's saying is that we all face our deaths alone.
Beautiful.
And in order for us to end the Cries and Whispers, we do have to overcome those demons. We have to overcome and let we have to face our shadows. And I just
So
that
gorgeous.
way that way the only way we can really do that is you see how we as individuals have those sort of reactions, and watching those reactions and letting them slip by, I think, is more important than living in that reaction and going through it. And one great way we can do that, or I can do that, is through watching film.
Exactly, yeah.
And watching film, you can feel that, and you can go through it without actually being...
And thank God there are masters like Bergman, like Tarkovsky, and like Antonioni, who can really teach us some of the most profound life lessons, really, just through a piece of well-made art.
Definitely.
Like these are films that can change your life.
It's changed my life already. I know that much.
Oh,
it's in my
me
top
too.
10 already.
Oh, it was always in my top 10, but it's gone to number 1, no question, because it's incomparable. It's incomparable. No other film can hold a candle to it. It is just...
Speaking of candles.
Oh, of course.
How many symbols of candles are there in that?
Oh my gosh. Like Sage, Bergman burns, man. He is just perfect. Perfect filmmaker. Good Lord. My closing statements would just be like inconsolable babble about how much I love it, because I can't remove my own adoration of the film from a critical consensus, because I just believe it's beyond perfect. I think that it is the best example of strong filmmaking. It's the best made film I've ever seen, you know? Oh, man, thank you for like watching it with me on doing all
Thanks
these.
for showing it.
Dude, it was very good, very good. We should do some more Bergmans. Of course, if there are Bergman fans out there, they're probably waiting for the 7th seal, and we will get to that eventually, and probably Wild Strawberries as well. Oh man, this is a life-changing one, man.
Please watch it if you haven't. I would highly recommend it. I just, oh my goodness, just how love and death are just so interplayed.
Love and death, Cries and Whispers, red and black. It's everything. It's philosophical, it's audio, it's visual, it's what film was supposed to be. It incorporates every element of what gives film its power, of what makes it special, unique, or a different kind of medium of art. And Bergman does that better than anyone else. And if you stumbled on this video without clicking on part 1, you should definitely go over and click on part 1. Because we get into some other concepts there that we didn't talk about here. So if you were waiting for us to talk a specific element, component, or scene, was most likely in the first part, and go ahead and click on it. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. And we're going to keep coming out with these videos. Thanks for supporting the channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. And, oh my God, yeah. This is a film that makes me happy that I've wasted so much of my life obsessing over them, because you feel like it pays off when you get something as magical and perfect like this.
Yeah, rich and profound. Thanks for listening.